Hey everyone, Liz Miller, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, here with
Ken Stilwell from Pega.
Ken, can you please tell our fine viewing audience what you do around these parts at Pega? Because it's not often I get to talk to someone with this very specific title. Come on.
So my title is COO and CFO, and what that means is I do whatever I have to do to make sure that the business is successful.
You are the land of no.
Yeah.
You are.
I'm the land of yes, no, and maybe.
You're the land of yes, but. But I am so excited to talk to you about this because Pega has made a very opinionated stance, in my opinion, specifically around tokens and kind of the madness that seems to be evolving out there right now. This idea that your success in agentic, your success in AI is predicated on how much you spend has always missed the mark for me. Yeah. And it really seems to miss the mark for Pega as well. Can you talk to me about the roots of that? And from a CFO's perspective, why is this the path forward for Pega to really look at not just where and when, but how mindfully you are tapping into tokens? Why is that so central to the conversation right now?
So maybe let's start just briefly with, it shouldn't surprise us that you have to pay for the capacity that you're using with the AI hyperscalers.
100%.
I mean, we're spending $1.5 trillion, $1.6 trillion and counting,
yes.
And this stuff's gonna have to refresh every year or two. So we're not surprised by that. No one should be. So I think maybe we were blinded a little by we just thought this stuff would get really cheap really fast, but the reality is it hasn't gotten cheap, it's gotten more expensive.
That's true.
To actually get. So
yeah.
So we haven't really, now will it get better? I'm sure, but it's still a very, very big investment. So let's start there. We shouldn't be surprised that we're gonna have to pay for this. It's not free, right? The second point of that is that when you had the reason why token maxing started, and if you and this is a slightly provocative comment, but I also think just very, very honest,
okay.
Right? Okay, token maxing started, token leaderboards started by the exact companies that wanted you to use tokens. So why would
I'm just gonna die on this side of the table a little bit while you keep going. It's all good. It's all good.
So why should we be surprised that AI model providers want you to use their stuff a lot?
Right.
Right. Okay. So first, no surprise that it's going to be costly. That's not the problem, because things that are costly doesn't mean they don't add value.
Right.
The second point is it shouldn't be surprising that the companies that had everything to gain by getting you addicted to actually token maxing are exactly the ones that benefit from it. Companies that didn't benefit from token maxing weren't saying that.
Yeah, there's no leaderboard.
Yeah, there's no. So now, very quickly though, those same leaderboards got dropped fast because all you had to do was have 1 or 2 articles out there that said, this is insane, right? So now you get to okay, so why is it important to connect the value of AI and the value of a token or whatever that measurement is and the cost? Why does that make sense? Well, the starting point for that, and this is I even feel silly saying this a little bit, but the reality is it's just economics. You're buying something and you want to get value from it.
Right.
So you don't overpay for something that you don't get value. The example that I commonly use is AI is somewhat of a utility. It's like electric.
It's a tool.
It's
absolutely.
So when you use that tool, you use it when you need it.
Yeah.
And the reason why you do that is because you know if you use it when you don't, you're just spending money for nothing.
Absolutely.
Right? And there's also, one aspect of is you don't have the air conditioning on and your windows open or the heat on and your windows open because you understand.
You sound like my mother right now, but okay, sure, fine.
So and I have this
true.
is the conscience part of me, right? So you know that because you understand that that's a waste.
Yeah.
You also do not try to cool your house to 65 degrees when no one is in the home for 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Right? That's another waste.
Yeah.
So there's simple things that we've learned in our lives around. I think we will learn those with AI. We will learn those with tokens. So for us, what we did was we said, okay, tokens are not free. And we understand that there's a value and there's diminishing returns and there's really high value areas. AI is a powerful tool. That's why it's going to be expensive. So when you think about using it, what we did was we looked at all the different use cases. And what we really hit on was, in design, you have heavy but concentrated and short-term use of tokens, because you're not designing all the time for years and years and years. So when you do that, you can afford to really hit tokens hard, because the value of the iteration of what you're using. And that's versus
and hopefully with AI, you're hitting decisions faster to make design more efficient.
You're gonna drive that ideation faster.
Yes.
Now, in that design, however, we are also learning that the model that you use for the task is also important.
Wildly important.
Because you don't want to use frontier models to do simple probabilistic. So there's this concept of like, when should you use AI, and then what AI should you use? Because you're perfectly fine using maybe more static models that are not as innovative and not as expensive. Then you jump over to like, where should I not use AI? And the simple example that I use for myself is, anywhere where a human being would otherwise do a task, make judgment, do analysis, reason, those are all in scope for where you use AI. Doesn't mean you should use it for everything. When a human being is not being asked to make judgment. For example, in a deterministic workflow where you want the work to bring, you don't want a human. The whole reason why you built the system is you don't want human judgment. If you used human judgment, you might be faster, but you're going to be wrong. So when you actually, so the next thing is, so you've got where you should obviously use it, and you've got where you shouldn't. Then what you have to figure out is, where can AI play around the fringes of that deterministic workflow? Because there's going to be things you want to connect to. You're going to want to do an analysis, a call, wrap up. There's things that you can that do have judgment, and it's okay to have judgment in how you do that. So I think it's important to mention is, where should you use it? Where should you not? Where's the middle ground? And then use the right model. And there's a last point that I would say we're hearing clients really, I wouldn't say struggle with, but I would say they're hitting this maybe this next evolution of it, which is my data. And the models can run much more efficiently when you're not making random calls across the internet for information that you have inside your own data. So how you set up the vector database, how you actually structure your data, you can get a lot of efficiency, and quite frankly, the speed and also the cost of the models. What we've done with Blueprint is really simplify the concept of a prompt. Really is not a prompt. It's really like kind of the instructions of how you're actually like. So that helps to make it efficient too, because there's an actual taxonomy in how the models are actually executing. So there's ways you can even drive efficiency. So that's kind of the way we see the landscape right now.
I love it. And I think, I mean, if we're being, like, let's be honest about tokens for also just a hot second, and also the speed at which agentic became something that was more than just like a hyped up phrase in like a locker room, really meant that teams who were not necessarily, let's say, change forward. Teams that don't necessarily think of experimentation as something that should come without punishment. Right? Like there are a lot of organizations out there that if you experiment, you're fired. Right? Like experimentation is a dirty word in a lot of places. But with AI, because this was something and these were tools that not a lot of us who were in leadership positions, management positions, that manager on up, we were not necessarily trained on a heavy diet of experimentation when we were coming up the ranks. So now with AI, we were told, go experiment. It was like, oh, shit. Like, oh God, please don't make me. So I think this idea of, we're looking at how many tokens you're using as a parameter of how willing you are to be curious, to experiment, and do all those things. But I loved something that got said earlier today, certainly on stage, and Alan said it during the great interview with Bain and with Cognizant and with Alan, of we should be hiring for curiosity. Because it's not about the experimentation and going through that act of, well, maybe I'll try 7 more A/B tests. It's about being curious, about asking the next question. And I love that. So I love the way that you guys have come and thought about it. I'm going to ask you this question more as a CFO.
Okay.
Right? So we're going to get your CFO hat on. I come out of marketing, right? And for a long time, for the CMO wasn't a partner, the CFO was an adversary. Because the CFO would come in and say, you're a line item, you're a cost center in the enterprise, stop doing these things, right? Like, so we're gonna cut all of this. Be only about performance marketing, don't be about brand, because brand I can't quantify. And there were a lot of these conversations that would happen over time. What strikes me as really interesting is that a lot of the decisions, a lot of the direction and recommendations, not just that comes out of the whole concept of blueprints, but actually comes out of and is centralized in Customer Decision Hub. Yes, it's doing all these things. Yes, it's acting on all these great things. But when I look at it with a CMO hat on, I also see it as potentially a common taxonomy and a common language that a CFO will understand. Yep. It is that if then. It is that if we do this and we follow these recommendations, if I follow this blueprint on international growth in unknown markets, I can get to a certain outcome. That's a business outcome that's not an AI output. With your CFO hat on, what would you recommend to CMOs who are looking to transition to the CFO being a partner, not an adversary, and is looking to make decisioning and decisions and AI, that common taxonomy between the two leaders?
So typically when there is friction between different functions in an organization, it is one of the contributing factors is that one or more of the people in that friction equation does not put themselves in the shoes of the other person.
Empathy? Stop it now. What are you saying?
So I think a challenge with CFOs and a challenge with CMOs, it's less with chief revenue officers because measuring them is much more empirical, right?
Yes.
You can look at bookings, you can look at
revenue.
revenue.
There's a selling cost.
There's a commission cost.
We know,
It's a math model.
Yes,
right?
100%.
When you look at engineering and you look at marketing and you compare that to finance, engineering builds things that they can't really empirically say what they're going to get from that. And marketing doesn't have a great conversion model. They have MQLs and SQLs, right?
Yeah.
But it's still very.
We've architected those ourselves.
Yeah, it's a little squishy.
Yeah.
So as a CFO, the CFO needs to be the role the CFO needs to play, which will play into the question you asked about from a CMO standpoint. The role the CFO needs to play, and a good one will do this, is to really truly be a relationship partner with the other executive. I don't mean a partner like sharing data or like
this isn't about like go have a beer.
No,
like that's not what we're talking
about.
Like
I understand what you're trying to do. I know that your career is on the line for what you want to deliver, and let me help give you some ideas how you can actually calculate ROI and how you can justify your business cases.
Yeah.
On the CMO side, what I think the CMO can do is stop. The CFO, I think, is about learning and understanding and less judgment.
Yeah.
The CMO is stop trying to attribute value when you're not sure, right?
Yes.
False attribution is a big problem, which then triggers CFOs.
Yes.
Because CFOs are they're square. They're not round.
Yeah.
So CFOs like to see things in cubes and squares and right angles. And marketing is more free flowing.
Yeah.
So marketing's saying, I'm doing X. I want to show to you that it's worth it because I instinctively know it is. So what happens is the CMO will sometimes get lazy on trying to find what is the real value, and they'll try to hand wave, and the CFO is not willing to come over and talk to the CMO and just say, look, that's not going to work for us. Let's work together and try to figure out exactly is the value. And maybe the value is still squishy, but at least it's something measurable. And then then at least you have some objective. I think that's typically the reason why you have, and that's, by the way, I would say the same thing for a CFO at engineering, which once again, you cannot build a product with any certainty of what you're going to get. You can't run a marketing campaign with any certainty that you might have statistics from the previous one you ran, but there's still behavior changes, economy.
And that's the difference, right? Because when people talk about predictability, that's not certainty.
No.
And I think that marketers have hit this point now where we need certainty. And there are a lot of CMOs that crave it. We just don't quite know how that translates for other functions across the organization. AI is giving us a lot of that language. Yeah. What I think is so interesting though is I always advocate for people because like you said, with revenue officers, you have a selling cost.
Yeah. It's a little easier to
everyone
measure,
knows how to get, you put your golf tournament in with all the, like with all your other things, and that's your selling cost, right? And we all know what that is. And we took everyone to F1, and you just carry the 2 and shift that.
I wouldn't work for that company.
Right? Like that sounds like a great place to work. But we all know what that motion's like, right? But we don't necessarily calculate a cost of engagement. Of what did it cost because we made the decision to do X over Y? What's that cost? And that has to include the cost of the tokens. Yeah. That has to include the cost of the cloud. It has to include the cost of our, not just our head count, not just kind of what we spent money on from an advertising perspective, right, but what was that engagement cost so that we can say, wow, you know what, actually, when we spent more on the agentic processes that actually delivered personalization, right? When we actually set out to personalize on a one-to-one all-channel basis, we actually got 3x value as opposed to doing this over here that did not have that agentic workflow. So I think when we start to look at all of that together, and it goes back to the right size technology, and yes, the right size model for what it is we want to achieve. And I will say, and the last question I'd love to ask you is this. I think this all links back to a real problem that we have in the market right now, which is we have confused outcomes with outputs. When we talk about business outcomes, and we see a lot of vendors out there doing this, they'll say, you need to talk about business outcomes. And so we're only going to charge you on an outcome-based pricing model. And so we're only going to charge you for the outcome or the resolution. And then you're like, okay, great. What is that outcome? What is that resolution? Oh, the model didn't hallucinate and you got your answer. So therefore you're going to pay for that. I would argue that's an output. I expect that output to be right every single time by virtue of me doing business with you. Right. Landing on a business outcome is different. A business outcome is something you have to step back and actually define. Pega has, again, a very opinionated stance on how it prices, how it charges, and what an outcome is. Can you walk me through that a little bit? Let's talk about why a work outcome, a case, an outcome at Pega is different than what a lot of the rest of the market's talking about.
So there's activity-based measures, and there's outcome-based measures. When you talked about like output, which is really a form of an activity. And when you have just solely activities, you kind of get into a metering kind of, you get into something that's just measuring in micro transactions at different SKU levels and points. And that works when you're AWS selling cloud compute. Right? Because you're just selling, you're saying, I'm gonna give you this much usage, you pay based on a meter. But when you actually look at AWS, using them as an example, when AWS sells other value-added services that are not just strictly storage and compute, they're focused more on outcomes, and that would be
100%.
And so when you think of Pega is not focused on how much utilization you use on the cloud, or how large your route to live is, or if you have 2 dev environments and 1 production. Those are not value creators. Where we view as a case is the context of a piece of work. And the piece of work is something that gets automated. So the outcome for us is a loan origination, an onboarding a client, a dispute, an investigation, whatever that might be. That's the outcome that you're driving. You're getting that. And so the case is that concept of that kernel of work that's being done and hopefully completely automated end to end. And that's an outcome. So we're looking at how many loan originations can we automate for you? And that's a value for the client, because there's some value attributed to each one of those, whatever their ratio of approvals and funding. The same thing happens with, say, a dispute or a fraud investigation or onboarding. These are tasks that need to happen. They happen through a process, and you want to minimize the cost to do them. The outcome is getting that work done. So we think of ourselves, we actually, years ago, I think Alan, that might be one of the quotes that Alan may have said years ago, which is, there's workflow, and he's always kind of leaned into like, we're really work due. right? Like we're like, like we're actually getting the
Yes.
work done.
Yes.
And I think that concept of like work due, which is we
Yeah.
want to get the work done, not just have a lot of activity.
Right. And I think that where people get caught is the fact that a lot of those outcome-based pricing is more about the individual skills that can be invoked, and then they're charging by the skill.
Yeah.
And there's a gotcha at the end of that.
Right.
Right. And I feel like what I've heard from all of your customers is there is no gotcha. It is the work that's at hand and the work that needs to get done.
Right. And just a perfect example of this is, internet providers, cell phone providers, they used to be activity models.
Absolutely.
How many minutes did you have?
Yep.
How much?
Prepay,
and-
postpay. That
right.
was the motion.
And now what we've moved toward is the outcome is you have access to our networks for a one month
Right.
period, and you're going to pay a price for that.
Yeah.
And that and that's the same thing with Wi-Fi at home. These are the models have evolved. We want to focus on like what is the value we provide, not how much activity
Yeah.
is a CPU doing work.
Love
on.
it.
And that's where the tokens have a disconnect.
Awesome.
Right? Because the tokens are more on how much it's processing and not actually the value it's
Absolutely.
creating. So.
Love it. Thank you so much. This has been
Awesome.
such a fun conversation. And again, we can have more CFO and CMO discussions really to maybe try to bring
Can we?
these to. We should totally do that. You think you're trying to run away from me. People can't escape me. Y'all know this. Come on now. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you. And thanks to Pega for having me.